We are the narrators, and we are Legion.
Welcome to the Civ Battle Royale X, Season 4, Episode 11, The More Things Change. Hello all! A host of narrators has come together to bring this episode to you, with only a slight delay. Some of us are long-time narrators, while others only recently began following CBR. We'll all introduce each other as we begin our narration sections, but we're all here to get this next dose of CBR content to you as quickly as possible. We hope you enjoy. With that, we'll toss you over to the first narrator. This is Goat Baby, and I'm here for my third round of narration. I've been watching since X2, but narrating since X3. I was the one who wrote the episode that took Doc Ito an hour and a half to read out. Don't feel bad, Goat Baby, you're not the first, and I'm sure you won't be the last. Moving on from that, here we have a war map. I myself didn't even know all of these wars were going on, so this was a big help. Thank you Nathan Massey on the CBRX Reddit. Hey everyone, this is Semi. I'll be stepping in for a few slides here and there to help with the narration. As for this second OC, I've opted to highlight the Pacific Pals comic for this week because I love the different fonts. When each different Civ is speaking, the fonts change to indicate that. What a nice touch. Also, how kind of Kenyo to donate that city to Umu. This episode and all episodes are brought to you by the generous donors on Ko-Fi. Money makes the cylinder go round too. Thank you. Shockingly, Pharaohs are still the PR number one by a lot. So I've decided to highlight Vijayanagara's 12-rank rise as the biggest change in the ranker's opinion this week, tied with Zhang's parallel rise. The reason for this rise is that they took a single Harappan city? Huh. Just like my last time narrating, we see a brown-colored civ that is not native to the British Isles settle Ireland. Last time it was Greenland. Now it's the Visigoths, who have settled Hispalis on the western coast. Further northeast, we can see that a few Faroese triremes, as well as one Visigothic trireme, has taken damage. Have the two declared a war we don't know about? If so, Hispalis might be in trouble very soon. Even further east in Scandinavia, we see that the Faroe-Sami War has concluded, with Maya ceding Jokmove in the peace deal. The Faroese have more civilian units than military, and only have 3 land units to defend their new acquisitions, so this peace deal came at a good time for them. The Sami, meanwhile, are looking increasingly locked out of the North Sea. In the North Sea, a Shang scouting party takes notes on what they witnessed on the coasts during the war. This party is eager to head back home and share what they have learned with Lady Daji. Witnessing Faroese tactics and Sami responses to them seems to be just what the Shang need to learn to counteract the amphibious attacks by the treacherous Goguryeo and the barbaric Ikko-Ikki. As things cool down in the North Sea, things continue to heat up in the Caucasus and Russia, as Kazan once again rips into the Kalmyks, capturing Astrakhan and Samara in one fell swoop. Kazan Tatar riders triumphantly chase after retreating Kalmyk horsemen, laughing as they cut them down. Yurts and farmhouses burn, and it seems the whole steppe is ablaze. Peace has finally fallen in the Arabian Peninsula, with Pontus coming out very bloody, but it could have been worse. They lost Eupatoria and Dioscorus, but kept Bandar-e-Bushehr. The peace has also saved Trapezus from the fury of the Sabaeans. They also have finally advanced further down the tech tree, as they now have a few swordsmen and composite bowmen in the north, but it obviously was too little, too late. Hey folks, this is Lasqueto taking over for the rest of the narration. You probably know me as the PR team's laziest ranker, but without further ado, let's get back to the action. Peace reigns in the Balkans, as Mithridates reluctantly lets Bathory keep Gaziura, to her obvious glee. This declaration comes at a good time for the Hungarians, as it frees up the army to fight back against Latvia in the north. The people demand vengeance against Ulmanis for the blood spilt in Komarom, and the full might of the Hungarian military marches forth to reclaim it. Down in the Sahel, bowmen defend the frontier town of Bornu, but their numbers are starting to look thin. King Idris is struggling to find recruits willing to fight off the purple invaders. Saba, meanwhile, has no such trouble, and their horsemen are already riding westward. Meanwhile, in the north, Rome marches on Cairo. Despite how it might appear, there actually isn't any room for more cities on Madagascar. Prospective settlers from the far lands of Vijayanagara and Karmatia instead have to settle for the outlying islands. Mogadishu holds the greatest swath of the island, and judging by the trireme fleet forming around Merka, Umar has his sights set on taking Molume and uniting the island under his rule. The Battle of Astrakhan rages on, as Ayuka Khan rallies his troops to flip the city back to his control. Meanwhile in the north, Samara also falls back into Kalmyk hands. This puts Kazan on the back foot, given they have nothing but bowmen on the front lines. Swordsman reinforcements are on the way though, and these cities will likely not remain Kalmyk much longer. There seems to be a bit of a traffic jam happening in the South China Sea. A Singaporean landing party sent to take Baekgyang gets caught up against Siamese reinforcements heading for the Philippines. As naval officers from each side hurl curses at each other, Dai Viet's cities remain undamaged. The Faroese settlements on Greenland continue to expand and flourish, carving out a surprisingly good living in the inhospitable north. They act as refueling posts for travelers making the voyage to the New World colonies and send back valuable ore to the homeland. As we speak, a new party of settlers strikes out into the copper-rich interior. Rio Grande is increasingly looking like Rio Pequeño. The mighty Tiwanaku Empire has Alegrete under siege, while New Hollander pikemen roam the countryside around the capital. Even the lost Bora Borans of Patio and Fa'anui, so far from their home isles, are causing trouble near Cacapava do Sul. Fearing for their lives, the Rio Grandense nobility flees to their frigid outposts in the South Atlantic, to no small resentment from the general populace. Watching the chaos unfold in the south, Koshinga sees a golden opportunity to capitalize on it, and declares war on Maguindanao. He clearly has his sights set on Ubanratchathani, aiming to sneak past the Thai fleet currently blockading the city and take it for himself. At the front of his fleet are the Tie Ren, pikemen who specialize in amphibious assault and taking cities. However, an unexpected storm has scattered the Zheng fleet, and their scattered ships may struggle to be fully effective. Koshinga has always been ambitious. In truth, there is one thing he desires. He's heard talk from Western travelers of something known as a pizza party, reserved only for the mightiest empires, and Koshinga covets one for his own. Meanwhile, in mainland Southeast Asia, the Dai Viet-Siam War has hit a bit of a lull. Both sides seem to be struggling in the rough terrain that separates the two empires. Despite their hostility, both sides agree that they hate fish even more, and declare war on the Seljuks. The latest scuffle between Eswatini and Rosvi ends inconclusively, as usual. Labotsibeni doubtlessly wants to focus more on defending against Ndongo. Nlagano is cut off from reinforcement though, and Ndongo's troops are already circling the city and preparing for a siege. Rosvi are also not looking great, despite not being actively invaded. Settlers wish to flee the overcrowded cities of Danangombe and Lobamba, but find no land to settle in. The little nation finds itself surrounded by Ndongo on three sides, and it will only be a matter of time until Nzinga decides to finish them off for good. The citizens of Waterloo wake up to find the biggest navy the Mediterranean has ever seen on the horizon. Leovigild is dubbing it the Armada, and is dead set on using it to get a foothold in the Maghreb. With how outrageously the local garrison is outnumbered, Waterloo is all but his. With how cut off it is from the rest of Sierra Leone, it seems doubtful this force will get much further, though. With the Sabaeans apparently repelled, the people of Kanem Bornu have found a new outlook on life, and many among the priesthood of Ngazargamu have been finding ways to recontextualize their faith. The reformation of Mutazila is well underway. As for why the Sabaean army is at a standstill, it's anyone's guess. Sorghag Tani makes peace with Pontus, and we get a peek at her empire. Mongolia is fielding a fairly respectable army, unsurprising given that all their neighbors outclass them significantly. Ikko Ikki might have finally settled Honshu, but as it turns out, it was too little too late. A small Pueblo settlement has been established in the east of the island. This comes as a shock to everyone who expected it to be Goguryeo or Nivkh who would settle first. Kenyo is outraged, of course, but he has only himself to blame for this. The first ships of the Wagi invasion begin to arrive at the island of Kuno. It was once Wagi many years ago, and Bolim has a long memory. He doubtless wants to return it to the fold. Despite being a seafaring nation, Maguindanao's navy is nowhere to be found. As more peace deals are forged around the cylinder, we look at Thule. The Arctic nation, despite being imposing, is relatively unproven in war or otherwise. Then again, their core neighbors are Yellowknives and Nivkh. Okay, I don't think they'll be needing to be proving themselves anytime soon. The Khoshuts appear to be continuing the proud Himalayan tradition of having weird, snaky empires. They're also finding out the limitations of chariots in mountainous terrain as they repeatedly fail to take Haiphong. Maguindanao sends them a war declaration, though this is obviously irrelevant. On the subject of irrelevant war declarations, we also have Nungar versus Dai Viet. Nungar are currently experiencing a period of peace after being at war with their neighbors for much of recent history. More cold-fire farms are beginning to pop up around Mendiarap. Ikko Ikki sails ships to Honshi-ji in a desperate attempt to retake the city, but it looks to be firmly in Nivkh hands. Ikko is in for another shock when their settlers arrive at Sakhalin to find that Goguryeo has gotten there first. With the ongoing reformation in Kanem Bornu, we take a look at the state of their faith. The priesthood have established the Apostolic Palace, which seeks to concentrate more power in the Grand Temple. The Afsharids seem to have once more underestimated their foe, as they lose Tehran to a small team of Bukharan spearmen. Granted, they look to have the upper hand in the long term, but losing cities to a weaker neighbor again is just embarrassing. As the two South American heavyweights descend on Rio Grande, a Tiwanaku prophet crosses the border into New Holland. The two empires have different faiths, and this evangelism could lead to relations souring between the two. Shang declares war on Makhnovia, and so we look at Shang. They look exactly as well as they have been doing these last few episodes, with quite a few developing cities. They seem to have filled out most of the borders of China outside the south, and are well poised into the mid-game if they can avoid Goguryeo. As a side note, how are Xinjiang and Yanxi already at 4 and 6 population? Weren't they destroyed one citizen's shells just last episode? Well, that's the thing with armadas. They famously don't work as well as intended. Peters must be an absolute diplomacy god if he got that peace deal to go through without losing Waterloo. Maybe Leovigild just outsourced declaration signing to an unpaid intern who had to get through a stack of peace deal proposals before 5 and wasn't paying too much attention. Shit happens, you know? More and more Kazakh settlers head north to lay claim to the Kara Sea. Why? Nobody knows. Also, congrats to Kazan for settling another city. The Kalmyks somehow convince Kazan to make peace despite being on the verge of collapse. Peace must be in the air this episode. Ayuka Khan isn't out of the woods yet, though, since the war with Makhnovia is still raging on. The loss of Samara might actually be a boon here, though, as it restricts the front that the Black Army can attack from. Gogurio's at war with the Selkups? Which scout accidentally stepped over the borderline? Either way, Gogurt seems like they have an easy walk into Ishtan and Varsed if they want the cities, as the Selkups have only a catapult west of the Teal Barrier some have called Mongolia. Say hello to the random Shang snow colony, everyone. The confusion in the South China Sea continues as more and more Singaporean ships arrive off the coast of Dai Viet. Meanwhile, in the midst of all this, the Siamese reinforcements are still trapped, jostling to be let through. They can only watch as Uban Ratchathani is surrounded by Zhang's ships. In the first stroke of bad luck for Maguindanao, Kuno falls back into Wagi hands. It looks unlikely that Bolim will take much more. His fleet looks almost as depleted as Kudarat's. However, Uban Ratchathani also falls to the Zhang, to no one's surprise. Koshinga now controls all of Luzon, giving him an even stronger hold on the South China Sea. A lone swordsman in the hills might just retake the city, but beyond that, it looks to be safely in Zhang hands. The citizens of Kutawatu look on in fear, wondering if they might be the next to fall. Alegrete holds on by a thread. It's almost shocking that Rio Grande's held out this long, but the city is almost surrounded now. It's only a matter of time. Meanwhile, the New Holland incursion seems to have petered out. Fernandina is blockaded. Taino's fleet may be small, but so is the Floridian army. I don't expect the city to fall, but stranger things have happened. Off in the Yellowknife capital of Deta, Akaicho unveils his latest construction project, Shwedagon Paya. This wonder comes with several bonuses to science, including extra science for religious buildings. While the Yellowknives are an irreligious people, this will still come in handy for them. The Kalmyks focus on rebuilding after the Kazanian sack of their capital and keep on fending off the Makhnovians in the west. Bukhara also join in against the Black Army, though they're mainly there for moral support, if anything. Seeing their navy's failures to take Nhagano, Nzinga enlists the help of a new admiral, Chen Tianbao. She hopes that his guidance might help her finally make gains against her southern neighbor. Meanwhile, in the east, Eswatini troops start making their way to the relatively undefended city of Malkerns. After initial success from Vijayanagara in taking Sri Lanka, this front of the war has kind of dried up. Krishnadevaraya probably wants to focus on defending himself in the north, where his army is starting to fold against Harappa's superior numbers. Damanhur's defenses weaken under the Roman onslaught. A few units have even started landing near the capital. Things don't look good for the Mamluks. The Faroese assault on Amiens continues, though the stream of ships arriving is so haphazard that the city probably isn't in any real danger yet. Meanwhile, another Visigoth settler sails north, looking for empty land. The situation in Bakyang is unchanged, but Dai Viet's luck is worsening in the north. The front lines keep shifting eastward as Siam starts to push toward Tran Dong. And yes, the Siamese ships are still there. Hello all, and this is Porkbean, picking up until slide 65 as an emergency narrator. Tecumseh receives an irrelevant declaration of war from Mexico, another lucky stroke as all of his key rivals, one way or another, are disconnected from Shawnee territory. The Osage form a buffer blocking Mexico and the Pueblo, and the Crow are struggling to ferry units across Lake Superior. Luck is a poor strategy for long-term survival, however, and if the Osage or Seneca decide to put Tecumseh out of his misery, then all he has to mount a resistance with are a handful of horribly outdated archers. Faroese control of northern Canada looks shockingly uncontested, despite their colonial expedition being defended by just 5 land units, 1 trireme, and about 1,000 unarmed fishermen. None of the Americans are in a particularly good position to take advantage of this apparent weakness, with the possible exception of the Seneca, who, with a decent enough buildup, might be able to rush a few cities before reinforcements arrive. Let's be real though, Faroese stats are so scary that I don't blame Cornplanter for just leaving them be. German fighter pilot Oswald Bolke leaps to the defense of Rio Grande, though the only way he'd be able to make any meaningful difference would be if he was allowed to use his plane. The Tiwanaku and New Dutch incursions across the Big River are progressing surprisingly slowly, and Bento appears to have adopted a defense-in-depth strategy, with a thin line holding the northern front and the bulk of his remaining units hanging back to defend the capital. Rio Grande is just rolling in volunteers for their defense, with Byzantine naval commander John Doukas patrolling the Falklands colony. The Tehuelche are also in the coalition and have sent their only trireme on a reconnaissance mission. And Bento's northern line buckles, with Tiwanaku cavalry sweeping in and consigning Alegrete to the flames. Eustis will need to move quickly to clear out the remaining defenders and prevent a flip, but after a turn or two the city should be fairly secure. Johann Moritz is struggling somewhat to position his armies, hampered by hills, jungles, and rivers, but sheer numbers are on the side of the New Dutch, and it's only a matter of time before they make a breakthrough and reach Piratini. Eswatini's bold snipe on the island of Socotra gives them a perfect stronghold from which to yell profanities at the Carmatians, who, for lack of a navy, can only respond with meaningless catapult fire. Meanwhile, Afsharid colonists make their way south into the forbidding Indian Ocean. They'll have to look elsewhere, however, as Vijayanagara outposts continue to spring up on the tiny islands along the African coast. Mog is also dispatching settlers beyond the horizon. Khosrow II of Persia enlists to help his Afsharid successors, after hearing about the absolute bullying of Tehran by Bukhar and Bowman. Muhammad Shaybani looks uninterested in actually pursuing a capture of the city, content to hang back in Samarkand instead of snap up easy access to the Caspian Sea. The Yellow Sea could have been an Iko-Iki lake, but Okinawa for now is a Zheng possession. A war between these two eastern powers would be interesting, as it would cover both land and sea and involve both of these civilizations' unique units. Yoshizaki Gobo is hidden behind a lake and could turn into a grind for Zheng units, but Koshinga is more than capable of using his unique Tieren as part of an amphibious invasion of the home islands. Albert Goering arrives in Kyushu, working hard as a great merchant to reclaim his family reputation, despite his more famous brother. A beautifully composed Harappan army pushes into Vijayanagara. The frontline cavalry has already encircled Chandragiri and is well supported by composite bowmen, with plenty of reserve forces to draw on should manpower get low. Conversely, Krishnadevaraya's armies are nowhere to be seen. with just a few token swordsmen and a rusty old catapult struggling to hold off the Indus invaders. High Priest Kenyo declares a holy war upon Maguindanao, joined by the Jodo Shinshu adherents of Goguryeo. This would be quite a distant war for both parties, and any major movement of troops would leave the north vulnerable to both Zheng and Nivkh, so expect this war to go nowhere fast. Caughnawagas is under attack once again, this time being Mexico's turn to launch a naval invasion. I don't remember the last time we saw this poor city at full HP. I'm amazed it still has a population as high as 3, given all they've been through. The Seneca are clearly not capable of defending this coastline, as most of their units are up north in their Great Lakes core, so Mexican occupation may be a blessing in disguise for Caughnawagas' battered inhabitants. In proving himself the naval power that Mori Motonari could never be, Chondor Igotu constructs Itsukushima Shrine. This is a great wonder for the military, as it grants plus 20 XP to all newly trained units, although Trondor has decided to construct it in Greenland, meaning he will have to ferry his elite troops from Itsukushima to wherever the action is. All land units also gain the amphibious promotion, which is great for a thalassocracy like the Pharaohs. The city of Klaksvik is a sight to behold, home to no less than 4 of the Cylinder's great wonders. Tour the ancient Forum Magnum to watch the great magistrates at work, or pray to your deity of choice at either the Dome of the Rock, Paro Taktsang, or the beautiful churches of Lalibela. After taking in the snowy sights of Klaksvik, complete your spiritual journey by catching a Grindadrap to ferry across Pharaoh's other cities with a visit to the Hagia Sophia, Kandaria Mahadeva, or, as mentioned, the newly constructed Itsukushima. For a kingdom with no organized religion, the Faroese people certainly do love their holy sites. One Bavarian swordsman finds himself in a rough neighborhood, surrounded by blood-crazed Hungarian horsemen and blocked off from the return path to Straubing. He'll have to camp out here for now, hoping that help comes before the Countess does. Trajan's empire absorbs the city of Damanhur, but units are looking thin on the ground as he pushes into the Mamluk core. This will be as far as Rome marches without reinforcements, which will need to be ferried across the Mediterranean or landed at the mouth of the Nile to complete the encirclement. With her small army looking in reasonable shape, Shajar al-Dur could take the opportunity and use this delay to begin a pushback. Ndongo and Eswatini continue to waste units against one another in one big, fruitless endeavor. They're just trying to give Rosvi room to breathe, guys. In a move that shocks the continent, Pahuska topples the existing Osage government in a coup and forms a military junta. A few Selkuk peace deals is all the excuse we need to check out the Selkuk core. And, oh boy, is it empty in here. There's like 2 units per city, tops. Better turn on that military economy at some point, bucko. Kazakhstan won't die on its own. Mexico and Pueblo keep at it. Mexico has failed to take Caughnawagas. Mexico stonks falling dramatically as a consequence. The star of this scene is Damanhur flipping again. Surely this time it is safely in Mamluk hands. I mean, that's what we thought last time too, but hey, this time it's different. Meanwhile, in the east, in Arabia, Pontus holds Trapezus against Saba and Bandar against the Carmatians. To the south, Minya takes nominal damage, and Kanem Bornu struggles to hold back the Saba hordes. How exciting! The Finns settle a 5th city, proving all doubters and haters wrong in an instant. Honestly, it's a grave error on Latvia's part for somehow allowing the city to be founded at all. But the Finns are awesome for taking advantage of it. And look at the size of the garrison, too. They know the Latvians will be upset. They are prepared. Goguryeo continues plundering the Selkup north. The city is all but gone, surely, and in great contrast to the empty Selkup core seen previously, Goguryeo has amassed a hefty reserve to handle any problem that comes their way. That's part of why they're in the top 5. Iko Iki and Nivk do some saber rattling. Later, each party tells their friends about how hard they fought up here. It's sort of a mutually beneficial setup. Sakhalin is settled by Goguryeo. Iko settles some fuck-off island. Tuli's long-term plan seems to involve invading Asia. I can see it working out. A lone Nungar trireme, trapped in the Arctic, laments its fate. Yes, yes, Kanawagas will fall. Seneca does not deserve to hold the city. The siege of Rio Grande continues as scheduled. That Sul city might fall pretty soon, actually. Any good-hearted person naturally wishes that the Bora Bora snag it, because it would be funny. New Holland seems to be making less progress against Piratini, but the city is also a lot stronger in comparison, so fair's fair. Southeast Asia remains embroiled in war. Siam and Dai Viet are partaking in the occasional skirmish along the rough terrain borders, and Singapore has managed to surround the inland city of Bakyang with their navy. Truly remarkable. Just on the edge of the screen, I see that Harappa has at least somewhat damaged Vijayanagara city. Royal Hungary heads north to avenge the fall of Komorom. They outnumber the Latvian defenders, but I can't say for sure it'll be enough. The terrain is flat, which will make for an easy approach, but the city is massive and thus has good combat strength. Poor strategy could ruin the whole campaign. Let's see if Horatio Herbert Kitchener can make it happen. Oof, what a name. Maguindanao looks awfully surrounded here. Wagi holds Kuno comfortably, and Zhang boats harass Kutawatu, albeit inconclusively. Uban Ratchathani at least looks like it'll flip, thanks to the heroic efforts of one spearman and one catapult. Meanwhile, on the mainland, Singapore's navally surround an inland city strategy somehow works, as the city falls to yellow health. I swear, there is no way this isn't just a temporary state of affairs. As Bora Bora joins the Maguindanao dogpile, we can see they're actually the first civ of the season to be fielding Carracks. The little Polynesian empire appears to be finally hitting a growth spurt, with Avera newly founded and a few more settlers on the way. Ishtan is finally taken by Gogurt's Dino forces. The Selkup spearmen nearby may retaliate, but the push to Varsed should be the next standing order. Looking at the notifications, misery continues to pile on Maguindanao as another trio declares war on them. Kudarat may not be seeing any of those adversaries knocking on his door anytime soon, though the international pressure against him is mounting, and what is clearly now a diplomatic bandwagon coalition. On screen is also Singapore's continued insistence on taking Bakyang, as well as Zhang's navy battering the surely-to-flip Uban Ratchathani. Cacique Humacao graces the Taino capital, ushering in another burst of culture upon his appearance. On a personal note, loving the clear separation of the Caribbean at the moment. If any side learns what it means to be a navy, it'll all be a single color in a short time. Tiwanaku is a very industrious nation, largely due to its forced labor edicts. All citizens must spend a period of time working the land, regardless of how much work actually needs doing. While half the populace fights against Rio Grande and the army, the other half remains at home as workers. England declares war on Florida in solidarity with their fellow island nation, the Taino. It does not seem likely that Henry will make his troops cross the pond, given the urgency to continue to invest in catching up. Eswatini sues for peace with the Karm, but only for Mdaluli to sigh in frustration that Harappa has swooped in during the peace signing ceremony to claim Safwan for its own. It was a noble and surprise effort, but went on to really wants to return to the area after losing Sutkagan Dor, and took the first chance he got. Elsewhere, Harappa is also doing well for themselves on another front. The large Harappan cavalry contingent smashes itself upon Chandragiri with what appears to be enough manpower, despite the horse's city-attacking penalty. Another competitor feeling the squeeze is Bukhara, as the two-front war is not going well for them. Shaybani praised that the Dzungars continue forgetting how to make it rain men through the mountains, whilst desperately repatching the battered ramparts from the Afsharid assault. Trajan's Egyptian campaign seems to have well and truly collapsed. Damanhur is safely back in Mamluk hands, and a wall of spearmen marches on Mansoura, intent on retaking it. Eswatini's attention focuses upon the isolated Ndongo city of Malkerns. An amphibious force of mostly archers will surely not do, but the effort is commended, given the fact that there was not as much gusto fighting Rosvi earlier. Goguryeo joins the Honshu Club with the founding of Buyeo. In what must be disappointing to Ikko Ikki fans, continued foreign claims on their turf are not welcomed by anyone, but definitely not by one of the top powers. Kenyo needs to make use of all those UUs sooner rather than later to clean up the countryside. As the walls of Piratini fall, both Tiwanaku and New Hollander soldiers race toward the city. Who will get there first? Regardless of the outcome, Rio Grande's citizens must also be racing out through the gap between enemy navies towards their island colonies, as there is surely no looking back. Two welcome peace treaties for Florida from two nearby adversaries. With only the trickle of Taino forces reaching their shores, any slowdown to the earlier big coalition is good news. Tehuelche measures themselves up against Ecuador and finds themselves up to size as a war declaration is sent in earnest. That initial messenger might be all that is ever sent to Ecuador, though, given we have not seen Tehuelche move units up outside the southern cone. Also on screen in the notifications, I take back the slowing down of war declarations towards Florida, but at least we know Florida has one indirect friend in Ecuador, as the Yellowknives also take offense on them for reasons unknown. This wild episode, at least on the narration side, comes to an end with a notification that Saba chooses to be a nomadic horde, as their people wish to continue moving towards ever-fresh pastures. Perhaps their mod author's fascination for nomadic steppe people has had an indirect impact. On screen is also the full extent of Ndongo's empire, which looks rather secured, given the potential threat sources are minimal, if you can ignore the prodding upon of Malkerns. Join us again next week for another action-packed episode, hopefully with slightly fewer narrators involved. And possibly on time. Good night.